Welcome to this edition of AFMC.
I'll tell you how I got better. I'm
Glad to be here.
But a mission to
Delivery of. Well, I think that we're going to talk about everybody's.
Arkansas is the second highest prescriber.
Welcome to AFMC TV. I'm Robin Ledbetter. Thank you for joining us. Today I have with me Dr. Chad Rodgers. He is the Chief Medical Officer here at AFMC and a pediatrician.
That's right.
Dr. Rodgers, thanks for being here.
Always good to be here.
So we're talking about sleep hygiene and why is sleep hygiene important for children and adults?
Right. So sleep is so important, and we just don't value it enough in our society. You know, I think it's kind of almost sometimes if you're taking a nap or you're trying to stay home for the weekend or even during the day and get a few hours of sleep, sometimes we perceive it as lazy. But sleep is such an important function in our lives. You know, it's such an important for our brain, but also for like our cardiovascular health, but also for our mental health. So, you know, sleep has lots of implications, especially for a child who's developing, who's growing, who needs that time. That's when you do most of your growing, is during your sleep. And for adults, you know, for a lot of their kind of restorative processes or regenerative processes, those also occur at night too. So that's why sleep is so important throughout your entire lifespan.
And how much sleep should children get versus adults? Is it the same? Is there all a certain number?
Yeah, it varies throughout your lifetime. So, you know, sometimes people, especially in the first couple of visits, the newborn visits, they feel like their baby sleeps all the time. And that's because the baby is doing so much growth and development. So they need a lot of sleep in order to grow. So it can be 10, 12 hours a day. Then you're kind of moving more into middle age where kids still need a lot of sleep because they're doing a lot of learning, they're doing a lot of growing, but they need a lot of wakeful time in order to do that learning and then in order to do the activity. So, you know, you're talking about 8 to 10 hours. Some kids may need up to 12. Even middle-aged kids. Again, teenagers never get enough sleep. Like, that's the most where I struggle the most. You know, so a good 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep for a teenager are also important. Trying to get them to go to bed at a decent time, wake up at a decent time, giving them some space to catch up with sleep or take a nap during the day if they need to. And then as we get older, we just don't need as much sleep. But there are still a lot of processes that occur for us where we're repairing the damage done from the day, whether that was from exercise or work, you know, giving your heart a rest, but also giving your brain a rest. As we get older, like in our last part of our lives, we just don't need as much sleep, but sleep is still really important because we do know there's a big link between sleep deprivation and the progression of Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. So sleep becomes important for that age group as well.
And so if a parent comes in to talk to their PCP, their pediatrician, about issues with sleep, what are some of the things that the healthcare community needs to know that they need to be on the lookout for to let their parents know in regards to sleep for their kids?
Right. A lot of the times what I really try to get down to is, you know, ask people, how's your sleep, and good or bad? And that's really not the best question to ask. Really some important details are like, what time do you go to sleep? What time do you get ready to go to sleep? What are the routines you do in the evening before going to sleep? What time do you get up? Do you have trouble falling asleep? Do you have trouble maybe staying asleep? So you may go to sleep easily but wake up easily. I think there are a lot of things about your health are important as well, such as what medications you're taking. Sometimes medications can affect your sleep at night and may need to be adjusted to the day or morning. Also, your diet becomes real important. What are you eating during the day? Are you drinking a lot of coffee or tea in the late afternoon? That could be affecting your sleep as well. And then exercise is really important to sleep. So in order to get some moderate amount of just aerobic exercise, 20 or 30 minutes a day, it's so important. You're doing that early in the day, not before bedtime, in order to impact your sleep. So those are all things that doctors sort of know. I think also the quality of sleep is real important. So, you know, is there a lot of snoring? Usually if you ask a wife that, they'll always look at their spouse and be like, that's your best test. But sometimes kids are sleeping in their own room, teenagers are sleeping in their own room. Sometimes going in and the parent taking a short video of their kids asleep gives the doctor a good idea of the quality of that sleep, to see how well they're resting, if they stop sleeping, if they have pauses, if they stop breathing, if they have short pauses or longer pauses in their breathing. Those are all things that are real helpful in sort of that evaluation of sleep.
How important is a consistent bedtime routine?
Yes.
So especially for children.
Yes. So it's always the first thing. Like when parents come or adults come to you and they talk to you about sleep, that is the number one issue. Like, when do you go to sleep? Because a consistent bedtime schedule is probably the most important part to addressing sleep issues. And so sometimes you have people who come back and they're still not sleeping well. I'm still not sleeping well. What time are you going to bed? Well, sometimes I go to bed at 10. Sometimes on the weekends I stay up till 2. I'm having to get up at different times in the morning. So that bedtime schedule is keeping it as close as possible is probably the number one thing that you can start to do in order to address sleep habits. That's why you get the sleep hygiene thing. So those are, you think about hand hygiene. So those are habits or routines that you do to stay healthy, to keep from getting infected. Same with sleep hygiene. Those are habits that you do every day in order to sleep, and going to sleep at a consistent time is probably the number one thing.
So is room temperature, all of those things a part of it too?
Yeah. And, I think a lot of discussion too with people, it's if you think about 8 hours of sleep in a day, so that's 1/3 of the day, right? So there's 24 hours in a day. So you spend 1/3 of your life ideally asleep. So when it comes to your sleep environment, it's really worth some investment. So, making sure you have a good mattress, making sure you have enough blankets, or maybe make sure you're not having too much. A cool sleep temperature or warm sleep temperatures, those are all sort of things that are kind of preference and may depend on where you are in life. Children may sleep a little hot, older adults may sleep a little colder, people who are going through menopause may be really struggling with temperature at night. So those are things to look at. The other thing is who you sleep with. So, it's really common in our culture to sleep with your spouse, but that may not be the most conducive thing to your sleep. So that might be something that you and your partner need to look at as far as maybe even sleeping in separate rooms. Not, because we want to cut into your intimacy, but you could have some cuddle time like that. But sometimes people sleep better. Same with sleeping with your child. People love to sleep with their children. We know it's not safe for really young children to sleep with their parents, but that can be really disruptive to a parent's sleep. And the kid gets to take a nap the next day. The parents are the ones who have to keep rolling through the day. So really addressing those sleep environmental issues are important. The other thing is thinking about when you're sleeping, is there a dog barking next door? Does a street light come on? Are you hearing traffic throughout the night? Those things, some of those things you may have control over, but by addressing those issues, you may create a better sleep environment for yourself.
Does screen time play a role in that?
Oh,
I know I'm guilty of being on my phone before I go to bed.
I know. Every recommendation I give you, I have done myself. And screen time is probably the biggest area that I struggle in. Of course, being on call as a doctor, sometimes you have to keep your phone next to the bed through the night. Very bad about checking email in the evening. We know that light from the phone has a lot of impact. And a lot of us use our phone to read now, just even like a book. That light from the phone can really suppress the melatonin and other things that need to occur in your brain in order to kind of help you slow down and go to sleep. So really shutting down the phone an hour or two before bedtime, turning off the TV, kind of trying to get into a low lighted area, doing activities that are really kind of relaxing, such as reading or meditation, taking your shower or bath at night, things that really kind of help you slow down. You can't just go from 90 to 0. You really have to give yourself, and you have to give your children time to kind of wind down the evening. So that, again, those rituals, those habits, those routines that you begin to do in the evening become so important.
And do you have parents that talk about sleep resistance with their children?
Yes.
And how does that play into this hygiene and schedule kind of routine?
Right. So everything we kind of talked about for adults, are so important to children. Number one, having that consistent bedtime, making sure they have a good, safe sleep environment. If your child is sleeping in a real chaotic environment, maybe 2, you're having to work nights and you're trying to adjust so your child is maybe not sleeping in their own bed or their own room. Those things sometimes you don't have control over, but those are all things that are going to impact their child's sleep. Most sleep issues sometimes are related to behavioral issues. So, it's not just about addressing those at bedtime. It's about addressing those throughout the day, making sure your child is eating well, getting the proper exercise, and that you're getting those routines, and that you kind of helped your child transition to that bedtime. So spending a little low-key time with them in the evening. If you go, again, from 90 to 0, you're going to have some sleep issues.
And what are some common misconceptions about sleep and sleep patterns? Is is it where children a certain age have to go to bed at a certain time, or does that change per kid?
It does change per kid. So, sometimes people get very focused on hours, and sometimes you have a young child that comes to the practice who may only sleep 6 to 8 hours at night, or you may have an older adult or an older teen that's sleeping longer. So people are usually sleeping to get the sleep that they need. So if they're not having daytime symptoms, if they're not being excessively sleepy during the day, then they're learning well, they're doing well, they're happy, they're not too fussy or cranky, they may be getting an adequate amount of sleep. And naps may also be helpful with some of that. You want to be careful about trying to make up for good sleep with napping. Really, you want to be consistent about your nighttime sleep. But those are usually, people get really focused on the time. It's really about the quality of sleep that you get.
And in close, is sleep is a discussion that should happen at a wellness visit?
Yeah, it's a great time to talk about it. I mean, obviously, we're talking about all the things in the kid's life, nutrition and safety things and stuff like that. But sleep is such an important part of development and growth. We're often going to ask about, is your child sleeping through the night? And the other question is, how much are you sleeping through the night? So, and sometimes those sleep routines, especially for children, mothers of children who are really young, they're obviously kind of, in this kind of hypervigilant state, they're kind of listening and watching for their child. That can be disruptive to them. We know that lack of sleep could affect the mom's mood, and then during the day, she may not be as available or interactive with her child. So, those things are good, very important time. It's a very important time to kind of talk about those things, yeah.
Well, Dr. Chad, thanks so much for being here today and talking about we all need sleep.
I know this sleepy topic.
Well, that's it for this episode of AFMC TV. Thanks for watching and have a great day.